One of the things that I found studying in America 10 years ago was that they kicked off every lecture with a point of bringing everyone into the room, and an acknowledgement of country really brings you and centres you here. One of the things that the American lecturers used to do they would show empathy at the start of a lecture for something happening in the room. So today, in the classroom at Stanford, they would have said, "We are thinking of the people in Baltimore right now and those affected by the bridge collapse." And it was amazing how to start a class experience with a piece of empathy for someone else in the world changed the way you went into that lesson. So today, I'll actually just take us right back to the start. No spoilers in there. I was told that we're talking about connecting with communities, and I took it down to a community, to connecting with people, and then to connecting with a person. The reason I'm here today is because I own a company called The Exchange, and The Exchange is a place where we empower the brave to grow, connect, and succeed. Our vision is that 10 years from now, someone will point to the Exchange clock tower in Dubbo and say, "I started my business here, I did something here, I went to a meeting here, I met someone here," and that made all the difference. But the Exchange is just 40 co-working desks, it's just some private offices, it's just some meeting rooms. It's just some occasional education. There's a kitchen you can use, there's a locker you can shove your handbag in. How does this space empower the brave? And that's the journey we're going on today. There's one story I want to tell you about the Exchange that I think sets out why our space is different and unique. This is Kaz Maxwell, and in the middle of the worst drought in European history, 2019, 2020, she's a lactation consultant with the New South Wales Government Health System. There's only 2,000 of them in Australia, so there's not many. The production of sheep on their property had gone down by 75%. She's got 4 kids, and she's earning her wage in town, and she desperately wants to leave the government health system and start her own business. So she comes to the Exchange, and we connect her with Australia Post. And Australia Post gives her a seat for the brave, which means they pay for her seat, which enables her to leave her job and start her lactation business. She comes into us a few months later, and she says, "There's a mum way out past Burke. It's going to take me 16 hours of driving to get to her and back. She hasn't slept in 2 weeks. The baby is non-stop crying. The baby will not feed. And the husband is in the middle of like 8 weeks of shearing or whatever people do out there. So the husband hasn't been home." And she walks into the space with this story, and we say, Bob Berry Real Estate's standing there because he's got a team meeting. I say, "Bob, will you pay for half of the fuel for the plane for us to fly her out there?" He says, "Sure thing." And then Inland Petroleum, the director Drew McCallan's standing there, and he says, "Well, I have a pilot and I'll donate the pilot." And the Narrabri Air Club donates the plane, and Peggy and Twig pays for the other half of the fuel, for no reason other than that these people are standing around in a community environment. And the next week, Kaz gets on a plane and gets out to that mother and solves the breastfeeding problem. These things don't happen when you're working alone from home in a donga at the back of the farm. These things happen when community is really connected and engaged. So some of the impacts we've had, 8,000 unique visitors in the first 2 years. 63% of businesses reported feeling more confident to employ during COVID, and 60 plus networking events within 2 years. So if you build it, will they come? If you have an idea, you've seen it work in California, you've seen it work in the UK, if you build it here in Dubbo, will they turn up? Will the Kaz Maxwell get the flight from Inland Petroleum and the money to get out to that woman who desperately needed the lactation consultant? If you build it, will they come? And the answer is typically no. So how did we get where we need to go with the Exchange? And that's the purpose of this part of my presentation. Tool number 1 for the day, if you haven't already picked up a tool from the introduction from Leah and Cindy, tool number 1 is a design thinking approach to engagement. You'll hear me talk about empathising, not engaging. Hands up if you've seen this framework before. I think a few LLS people might have seen it. Great. It's the same every time you look at it. It's a human-centred approach to traditional problem solving. Most people, when they come into problem solving, they define the problem. That's their first step. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. Then they try and come up with as many ideas as possible, and then they prototype, hopefully, and test their solutions before engaging those solutions. Too often, we get stuck at defining the problem and we forget to empathise with the people at the heart of the problem. So I want to take us back to this first step of empathising. Because if you design solutions for imaginary people, you will get imaginary solutions. If you design solutions for 1,000 people, they just won't fly. You have to start with designing a solution just for one person and scale up. And that's what we're going to try to do today. The reason we do this and the reason we use design thinking comes down to a very simple example that I give every single time. The Stanford University design team were given a challenge. How might we build a more efficient MRI machine to process patients? Hands up if you've been in an MRI machine. What's the experience like, Matt? Yeah, but what would it be like for that kid? Terrifying. And what happens when they built this world-class MRI machine is they could not process any of the children efficiently, and wait times blew out. Why does the hospital want to process efficiently? Money. So that was their problem. We want to make more money. We want to process more efficiently. Our challenge statement is process children efficiently. If you want to solve for people, you have to be a person. To empathise with a child, you have to be a child. You have to get down on the ground and approach that MRI machine as a child. You have to listen to the sounds as a child. And so the version 2 solution, the challenge statement they came up with by empathising with a child is, how might we create a scanner experience that children will love? So when we built the exchange, we didn't say, how might we fit as many meeting rooms and private offices in this space, because that's what's going to pay for the renovation and the interest rates. We said, how might we create an experience and a space that people will love, that people will turn up and feel good when they arrive, and when they exit, they feel great. So this is the solution. Children are invited to a pirate ship by the pirate, the head doctor. This is like a gazillion-dollar MRI machine and like $200 worth of stickers. The stickers is what processes the patients more efficiently. They are invited onto a pirate ship. They turn up and everyone's in costume. The narrative is changed. And the noises, the excitement, is what allows the children to go through this experience more efficiently. So what we're going to do is look at the first tool that I like to use for engagement. It's called a user sketch. And we have 5 parts to the sheet in a user sketch. We're trying to understand our user. We're trying to empathise with them. We make a lot of assumptions, but we also do a lot of interviews with people to better understand them. So I want to start by empathising with a person called the farmer's wife. Or let's call her the farmer's girlfriend. And let's draw her. Here she is with her little, Subaru. She's straight out of Sydney. Here's the harbour bridge. And she's moved to the farm. Here are the cows. And they've got, 2 dogs. And they've got a ski boat. They live somewhere on the Barwon River. And there's their house. There's the power pole. There's mum and dad right next door. So we all know who we're talking about now. She's 20, but she's 28. She has a degree. Let's get her little degree hat here. She's got a STEM education. She's a civil engineer. She's got a skill set. What else do we know about her? She's ambitious. And she's brave. Anything else we know about her as a demographic? We're generalising a bit, but we're focusing on one person. She's I'll put a big light bulb, she's sparking, yes. She's isolated. She's one person in a sea of many. What are her goals? To be included. To be valued. To be valued and valuable. And you mentioned one of her pain points, she's isolated. She doesn't know how to find a first client. She doesn't know with just 6 years in the workforce what skill or product she can sell. And she doesn't know how to start a business. Because guess what? When you're that far out west, there aren't any jobs to apply for. So these are her goals: to feel valued, to feel valuable, to feel included. And her pain is isolation, finding a first client, finding a product and starting a business. And all of this is happening alone, 50 k's from town, in a donga, in the backyard, on the Barwon River. And I'm sure you meet these people when you go out and do your engagement. So the second part of the engagement tool that I'd like to show you is called an empathy map. And what we're going to do is, if you were doing this with a real life person, you would sit down with that person and you would interview them and find out, what do they say, what do they think, what do they do, and what do they feel. An example would be, you say to someone, how often do you go to the gym? Oh, 3 times a week. You say, great. When was the last time you went? Well, in 2019, I went to the gym 3 times a week, but then COVID hit and the gym closed and I never really re-engaged my membership, so now I just go for a walk occasionally. So you can see how people say they do one thing and then they do another. And the way you structure your questions in an empathy interview could be misleading for the data you receive. So here we go. We've got our 28-year-old young woman on the farm trying to sell a product and start a business and be included and be valued and all these things. So what does she say? She says things like, I have a degree. This is my identity. She says, I can do that. Oh, hey, can you run a conference? Yeah, sure, I can do that. No, I'm a civil engineer, but yeah, no, I can do that. What do? They charge as little as possible to win the work. They work huge hours, and what they think is, this might not be good enough. Yeah. And what they do and what they don't do is they don't ask for feedback, because they're too afraid that what they're going to hear is you're not good enough, and they'll have to process that information alone on the farm. And so how are they feeling? Worried? Tired? Crap? Isolated? And yet, what they do is they work so hard, they win all these awards and become so famous for their work, even though they're charging as little as possible, doing as much as possible, becoming very well known, but the whole time feeling like this and thinking, is this good enough? So what are the solutions that come to mind for you to help this person? And don't jump to the solution being a co-working space, because that's not fair. What are the solutions that come to mind? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. She's going the opposite direction. That's right. So what would be solutions that you would put in, that you would think the husband or the boyfriend sits down at the kitchen table and says, what?
Reminder of the goals.
And? So coaching. Mm-hmm. Community. Yep.
Increase your rate.
So the coaching to improve the business. Yep, this ad community. Education. But there's so much free online education. She goes into the community every weekend, goes and stands on the sideline of the football, goes into coaching, goes in and gets coaching. So how, if she's got all of these things, do they not add up to solve the problem? And it's because when they don't link, we're missing the most important piece, which is the confidence. You can add capability, you can add community, you can add capacity, but if you don't have the underlying confidence, you end up missing out on providing game-changing solutions for this person. So we're still talking about one person. And the reason I know this person so well is because that person is me. And what I did in 2013 in this situation was I left. I left regional Australia, I left a boyfriend of 10 years, I left the 2 black Labradors and the ski boat and the homestead, and I went overseas and I went to Stanford and I got an education. I came back, and by starting the exchange, I was trying to solve the problem I faced in isolation on that farm. So when I came back and decided I'm going to start this co-working space, I knew the person so well that I was designing for. But what I failed at was engagement with authority. I wrote a 70-page business plan in my bedroom alone, took it to 14 organisations in leadership authority, and they said, Dubbo isn't big enough, you need to define your strategic imperative. I don't know what a strategic imperative is, and don't apply, we've already chosen where the funding will be spent. So I totally failed. But what I didn't fail at was engagement with people, from 1 human experience to 8,000. We piloted and created programs not by asking people what they want, but by finding out what they needed. And we took the community on the journey. I didn't ask the community, what do you want me to do with this space? We told them what we were doing with this space. Too often we get into consultation, we want to ask people what they want, not what they need. So we took on the journey, we went from Dubbo, we went to Narrabri. Narrabri seems like a very similar problem. Take an old building, turn it into an incredible co-working space. But I got better at dealing with authority. When authority said, you must turn this courtyard into 7 car parks, I very simply explained to them the difference between what they want, which is this, and what Narrabri needs, which is this. And communicating with council as to what they need, not that what they want, got us around very difficult terms of a development application. We also showed people what we were doing. We didn't tell them. We didn't say we were using local trades. We showed them we were using local trades. I'll finish up by just saying empathy is about understanding the need and not asking for what people want. And again, too often in consultation, we ask the community what they want rather than really exploring what the human, one human, needs and then designing up from 1 to 8,000. Thanks everyone. Please stay in touch.